You can go on.
All right, I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Board of Finance for March 18th, 2021. I'd like to call this to order by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's go into public comment. Do we have anybody that wants to make public comment?
I see Betsy's on the line. I don't know if she wants to make comment. Betsy, if you're on a phone, it's *6 #2. There you go.
No, thank you. Not right now.
Hearing no public comment, let's go into budget discussions.
Harry just joined. I don't know if he wants to talk.
Harry, public comment before we move on?
Yes, let me just, I just logged on here. Hold on one second. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. I just, you just bear with me a second. I want to turn this off. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I just wanted to applaud the Board of Finance, and I would like to just tell you, being 18 years in this, I think we have done a very good job in preparing people for a plus budget. I know a lot of towns, or some towns, have zero budgets, and most people don't understand, and they're not comparing apples to apples. And I think that we have done a good job explaining why we have a very small increase without having to go into the fund balance and the balances, the benefits of that. And I think that this budget is going to pass. I think it's going to pass with a pretty strong number. And I just want to make that comment. I know that we take a lot of criticism, and I just am happy to be part of this process. And I think we will have a very successful referendum. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harry. Appreciate all your work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Harry.
You're welcome.
All right. So we're gonna close up tonight. We got to approve it by the end of tonight. So I think we had open items. Let's start at the top. Revenue. Bless you. On the revenue side, we had one open item. We're gonna do a final closeout at the end. You know, Dan wanted to go over a final, but let's go through our open items in an organized manner, and then at the end we can go back. So on the COVID revenue line, we were talking about what revenue to put in there. Now, Steve and Marcia had put together a spreadsheet for us that showed blue sky, everybody, the dream world money that we were going to get, total blue sky. 2019, we got about 34% of the money that we asked for, that we put into what we put in for, we put in that account, we got like 34%. This current year, we're running about 11% of the money that we've stacked up. We're going to maybe get more when we put it in a later date, but right now we got about 11%. And next year's projections, if I read our chart right, is about $417,000 worth of money in the bucket. Is that correct, Marcia or Steve?
Sounds right to me.
So I know, Mark, this was something you were looking at. In our best year 2 years ago, we got 34%. Last year, we're running at around 11, hoping to get more. So what percentage of 417,000 do you feel comfortable with?
What percentage of 417,000? See, I think I'm looking on something different than you're looking at.
So
No, because prior year is 21. That's this current year we're in, I think.
Yeah.
Year 2022 is the 474.
No, this year there's $2 million, 2.1 million possible pie in the sky.
No, that's from actual prior year cumulative.
Fiscal year 21 is the budget we're in. We're now doing budget for fiscal 22, right?
That's how I'm reading it. Am I wrong? That's what I'm trying to.
yes, you're wrong.
All right, let's hear Marcia out.
All
All
right.
right. So last year, we got reimbursed for 100% of our costs. That But then the rules that have not been set yet that say that we might be able to get reimbursed for some of our revenue that we didn't get. That we've never had that before, that I know of, any grant that said missed revenue or delayed revenue we might get reimbursed for. So that's a really scary thing. But
But
when
Marcia, that's the year that we've already closed, not the current year that we're in, right?
Correct. That
Yes.
was last year. And these numbers are what the budget was off, how much it was down from budget. What rules they make up from that for that, I don't know. So, but from an accounting point of view, without the pie in the sky point of view, we did get reimbursed for 100% of our costs. And we tried to put what grants reimbursed them up here. So I don't think that it's fair to say that we got reimbursed any particular percentage by looking at this. This was all pie in the sky. And you do have the opportunity after the public hearing to go back to the budget. Maybe by then we know some rules, and you could say, all right, so the rules have come out. If they've come out by then, and it looks like this would be a realistic number to put in, and this would be a realistic mill rate.
So if we get any of that, so basically we put $671,000 into that costing. We got back $228,000 of that current. If
Yep.
we get reimbursed that back money, where is that money? What year is that falling into? How are we handling that revenue from 2019, 2020?
So my thought is that by June 30th, we will, or at the time we do the financial statements, because they're trying to fast track this. At that time, we should know what the rules are. Before then, we should be able to make a calculation and maybe even do the application for this money. And we would pick it up as a receivable at June 30th, 2021. And so the way, let's say this pie in the sky really works, it would all be a receivable at June 30th, 2021, and there would be nothing left for next year's revenue. That would be our ideal situation, is we apply for it all based on costs we've already had, and there's no revenue next year.
And what's the 474 in the year 2022 column?
That's how much that I thought, if they say, well, revenues are out, you told me to find everything we could. Those are the other things I thought we would have, but we're getting 1.6 million or so, we think. We've already earned 2.1 million. This would be 2.5 million. So our costs that we may be able to justify will add up to a lot more than that grant.
Right.
Potentially.
Exactly.
Potentially.
So not going to the 3 million or 3 million plus, I'm in the, $2 million range, which to my thought process, and it's clearly up for debate, would be that we put down a 200,000 as seems to me to be a very reasonable number as to what we should get for these grants. If we're looking at maybe 2 million and possibly over 3, 10% of that to me seems very reasonable.
I'd be comfortable with that. I wouldn't want to go much higher, because if it all falls apart on us, we have to make that up.
Right.
And to me, I would really like to have this discussion. We had talked about bringing in a plan for the debt bubble. I would like to have these hand in hand at your meeting next month, and it wouldn't be too late for you to change the budget at that time and make that decision at that time.
Right. I understand that, and I'm in favor of, obviously, make the absolute decision with as much information as we can.
And my concern there, Mark, is if we put 200,000 in today, and then we find that that's not realistic, we've told the public 1 mill rate today, and then we're raising it.
Understand that. That's why I'm at 10% of not even going to our pie in the sky. I didn't even dream of anything over the 2.
Yeah.
But when I look at the 198, 695, that stuff, whether they do revenue or not, that stuff, I don't want to call anything a guarantee, but that 198,000, 199,000 is
Yeah, we have a much better chance on
pretty
that.
good chance to get it. So I did a little reasoning behind my 200. Yes,
We
I-
we wouldn't get any of that because
I
all
think
that,
Dan raised his hand. Let me listen to Dan for a minute.
So no, I'm still very confused as to the accounting treatment and what we're talking about. So can you explain again, Marcia, in a bit more simple terms, how 443 from fiscal 20 and 16 from fiscal 21 can turn into revenue in fiscal 22? That's the part that I don't get that.
okay. So this up above is everything that it looks like we might consider based on the rules that have not been established yet. That just their brief 2 sentences. This is money that we already have other grants for. And these are the grants that we have. So we're expecting this year, we're gonna have, that last year it was 228, this year it was gonna be 198. If you add those 2 together, they equal our revenue in this year's budget. We're up by 8,000 because we gave it to the fire department to reimburse them. So these are the revenues that are in this year's budget, and they're allocated based on the costs that, so pie in the sky, we have 671 that we're gonna look at to be eligible. We've got grants already for that, for if we're matching year to year. We've got grants already for 228. So there's 443 that we may be able to go backwards and say, we want you to give us 443. This year, pie in the sky, 1.8 million. We've got 198. That would be 1.6. Total between these 2 years is 2.1. Our grant that we're getting is only 1.6. So if we were to say we want the whole 1.67 or something like that, round it to 1.7. If we were to say we want the whole 1.7, because we've already earned it, we would book it all as a receivable here, and there is nothing left to cover these pie in the sky costs.
Correct. So how does that turn into 22 revenue?
Right.
So I wouldn't put it in this 2022 revenue.
Basically, that's what I said earlier when I opened. It's like the revenue really for 2022, the budget we're talking about would only be 474 maximum if we were to get it somehow, but it's a 0 really. It's not even a revenue.
Right, this is not revenue, this is the balance that's not covered by grants. That's why the cumulative is here, so you can see that at the end of June 30th, 2021, we've already earned 100% of that revenue of 1.7, and there's nothing left to earn.
So we don't want to put it in this year's budget.
Yeah,
Right?
that's what I think I'm confused at. So if you're saying it's not, then we wouldn't use it at all.
So I would say that we may put it in, we may get it and accrue it all for this year's budget. I mean, to me, and you can have a different opinion, to me, the goal is to get it as fast as possible. We could say, you know what, we're going to take out all of these and we're going to get it 200,000 a year for however many years or whatever the math works out to be. I mean, that's an option if you wanted that. But my thought is that we're going to try to get all that revenue in this year. We're going to try to deal with the debt bubble because some years our debt is going up over $2 million.
All right. So I think I'm starting to get it. So if the scenario is that we apply for and get approved for the 443 plus the 1.6, and that's all agreed to by June 30, 21, it becomes a fiscal 21 situation.
Receivable.
Yes.
And so my thought would be that goes straight to surplus, which goes straight to fund, but you're saying there's other things we can do with it creatively.
My thought is, yes, it goes to surplus and capital non-recurring, where we've been saving up this money, so we don't use our general fund balance. But essentially we use it creatively, because I've been working on some schedules for your meeting next month.
Okay, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that next month. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So our fund balance right now is good. I agree with Marcia. If we get this money and it's a receivable that's verifiable, we know it's coming, and we can take it in as a receivable this year, put it in a capital non-recurring or surplus so that we can use it in the future to help with the debt bubble.
Okay, so in that situation, so bringing that scenario forward to fiscal 22 and the budget we're talking about now, the only cost, again, if what you said happens with that first pie in the sky, the only numbers that we're talking about for the 22 budget reimbursement is 474.
But we have no money left.
What is the grant actually that we've been told dollar amount is coming our way if we meet all the requirements?
1.6.
They haven't finalized it, but it's about $1,675,000.
So then how are we even into the 2 millions?
Right.
You said to put down every cost
Okay.
and
Our possible costs.
every possible cost. And let's say all of these were disallowed, that because we don't know the rules yet, that if all of those were disallowed, now we were going to be looking for things to spend it on, because we've only got 1.3 million here. So that's
right. But the total as of now, so we're all clear, as of now, the way it's laid out, and I understand, Steve, exactly what you're saying, and Marcia too, is 1.6. So anything beyond 1.6, if we get the 1.6 this year, there is no more money unless a new grant comes out. So putting a number of 2.9 million is, I know it's right in your spreadsheet. I'm not disputing that, because what you're saying is 17 items on 1 year could be left out, 3 on the next year, and it could drag out. But the bottom line is 1.6 is the cap.
Regardless of what year we get it, 1.6 is the cap.
Right. So, all right. So regardless of what year we get it, 1.6 is the cap.
And we've received, before Dan, sorry, I really apologize. We've already received how much of that? The 228 and the 198.
That's not the 1.6. The 1.6 would
be on top of that funding.
Be on top of that. This is other funding that we've received.
All right.
CRF and stuff.
Right. So the potential is, if we get it in the next 3 months, we have 0 for next year. And if we don't get it for the next months, we have the potential for 1.6 in the next year.
Yeah. So if we get it, we don't have to physically get it. It has to be measurable and available. So we have to be able to measure it. We've got available means that we expect to get it within the next fiscal year, and then auditable. The measurable, available, and auditable are our criteria to bring it in as the receivable.
Now I understand. My suggestion is we put 0 in for this budget, and if we find out things change in the next 2 months, we can add the revenue and lower the mill rate.
Yeah, when I suggested it, I didn't think there was any chance we were seeing it this year.
Exactly.
I thought it was all coming in next year. So,
Yeah, no, I get that.
So basically years going forward is 1.6 minus what we get prior year. It becomes cumulative. So we got 1.6 on the table. If we get 1.3 in this current year budget, we only have 300,000 that can carry over for the next couple of years. If we get 150,000 in next year's budget, we can only carry 150,000 to the next year.
Correct.
So I'm with Dan and Ben.
Yeah,
I can't imagine the government does anything in 3 months, but if they do, great. But if we can readjust with better information to lower the mill rate later.
Well, the conversations I've had with our senators and congresswomen say that the Treasury has 30 days to promulgate these rules. I can't believe that they're going to be able to do it in 30 days. I just don't believe it.
Right. It took them how many months to cut stimulus checks that they said they were going to do in a week?
Right. So I agree with Dan. wait to see if these rules come out, if we get more clarity about this.
Yep.
And then at your next meeting after the town meeting, you can make an adjustment and
Yep.
it'll do nothing but good for the budget.
I'm in. All right, that's enough discussion on that for me, unless anyone else wants to talk about it. Since it was my crappy idea.
Great idea.
It wasn't a crappy idea. Everyone is going through the same thing of what is this money? What's it going to be used for? It's. All right.
Okay.
So basically, that's all we had in revenues, I believe, from my notes.
Right.
On the expense side, well, I think you had them highlighted, so we'll take them as they come, Marcia.
Town clerk, part-time wages. I just have that highlighted because you talked about it at the very end of your meeting and I didn't want to be presumptuous and think that you all agreed with that.
I think I'm in agreement with that. How does the other board members feel?
I'm agreeing.
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
All right, you can make it black. Thank you. On the library, we talked about the library books with the grant. Okay, let's go to the library books. We had talked about adding 10,000 in for the electric to fit it into the grants. If we get the grant to cover it, we would allow it, and if not, we'd carry it over.
I think it was down below.
Yeah, I think it was further down.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good idea, Glenn.
So I'm sorry, I've missed.
There it is. It's there.
We said on the electric books, the 10,000, we were gonna add 10,000 into that. But under Steve's control of, if we didn't get the grant, he wouldn't approve the money to be spent. They
Right.
would have the 10,321 to spend under this budget. The extra 10,000 would be, Steve would approve anything beyond that if we got the grant to cover it.
So,
I think it's down on your list.
so that, what grant are we talking that?
This one we just talked
The
about, the
COVID
COVID money.
It's just the excess expense. If you had expenses over and above last year, right?
Got it.
So they're buying electronic books.
Which we're saying is COVID expense.
Library, and they need more electronic books. So we're thinking put another 10,000 in, because this is going to continue. And if it's allowed to be applied for and paid for under the grant, we'll do 20,321. The library can spend. If it's not, they can still spend 10,321.
So how do we account for that?
So,
Just support a finance
Well,
adjustment?
you add 10,000 under your adjustments,
Okay, and it's just that you don't.
and then we manage it.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, it's under the first selectman's control with Marcia, the financial controller. It'd be like any account that had extra money in it. At the end of the year, it
Yep.
goes to fund balance.
so if we're basing this on getting another, so this is set right now, that they get this amount right now. And if we get a grant for it, we want to add 10,000 to their budget. We could do this outside the general fund and just have the revenue and the expense go through the grant fund. Just like the Title I and stuff, because we, just like the Board of Ed, we don't have any control of their budget once it goes to them.
Would it still be eligible though? If it's
Yeah,
not
'cause I thought that was the contingency, is that it had to be in the budget.
to qualify?
Yeah,
It has to, it's compared to the prior years.
Right.
It's to 2019 being the base year.
Right. So
So-
we're 10,000 over the 2019 base for new books, electronic books. What we're saying is make it 20,321 and just ask the library not to spend it unless we get the funding for it.
Is this the same $1.6 million grant that's already over allocated? Are we double counting, or are we talking about a new grant?
No, that's the same grant. It does, we don't know the rules, Dan. That's our problem. So
Right.
half of those items could get wiped out. We could have 90% of those items get taken away
Right.
and not ever even come close to getting to 1.6. They might discount 90% of our items like FEMA did on a couple of our storms.
Yep.
And we're stuck with only getting 160,000.
Yes.
So
So-
basically, to Marcia's point, if the library has control of that money, we have to put our trust in the library of saying, these are the things, and next year they utilize it for electric books next year. I mean, we'd have to put some faith in our staff and our people.
So
I'm very
on my-
comfortable.
Would it
I'm
make
very
sense to add that as a capital item then?
It's,
On my schedule, that 10,000 for books is this 10,000 right here.
right,
That if we decided that money that we could sit here and say, we don't want to reimburse ourselves for anything, we want to do these positive programs. So if we said we want to give them another 10, it doesn't have to be in this budget. That we could say, you know, we don't want any of this for these purposes. We want to use it future thinking for, you know, a coffee bar in Four Corners or something that
but Marcia, you said to us on a number of times, the difference between the base 2019 budget and other expenses in this budget are applicable for the grant. If we take 10,000 and put it somewhere else, are you saying you're sure it can be applied for under the grant?
Yes, yes, because some towns are developing committees and saying this is, you know, the steering committee for this grant on what we want to use it for. We just went and did financial stuff. So yes, you can use it for proactive things as well.
Are you sure? We know that they said
You don't know the
the
rules,
base
but
budget. Yeah, but we do know that they have said from the base 2019 budget, if you have additional expenses, it will be covered. We don't know if we put it somewhere else, if it will be covered. We're guessing it would,
I'm pulling it up.
right?
So my belief is that yes, and so maybe what we wait till next month to look at this, the same as the other stuff. We have some more rules.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I thought it would be a lot easier. I'll be honest with you.
Agreed.
I thought it would be an easy way to get the library some more support, but if it seems like the rules won't fit or I'd rather wait the month like you say. I don't want to convolute anything here.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
I'll tell
So
you that I'm going to struggle after the town voted to do something that's going to potentially raise the mill rate, even though we know that's an artificial inflation.
Whereas if we put it in now, we can always take it out. and
That was Glenn and I were,
That's
my
also
theory, thinking.
All right, let's leave it out then. Let's go on to contingency, I think was our next thing. All right. I'll speak my opinion on this first, and then we'll go around to everybody. My opinion on the contingency is, I know it's a huge number. I see that it's a huge number. But we've asked the Board of Ed and we've asked the town to really squeeze down on their budgets and get super, super tight. We've tightened it down more, I think, than they've ever been tightened down in previous years on both sides. And I think we need a little safety net in case some of these numbers go away that we don't know how they're going to go. We made best projections, but we have squeezed them down to a very low increase. And until we get more historical data on this, I'd feel comfortable with that contingency. And then the next year's Board of Finance can review what was used and maybe bring that number down next year. Again, like I say, the Board of Ed came in with a very low ask at first. In Steve's group, he had a 0%, tried to get a 0% on the operating cash. You can't go below 0 too many times and not lose something. So that's my opinion, but I'm just one member. So Mark, you're at the top of my chart as I'm going down. So go ahead.
Is that why I keep getting called on first?
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
sitting
you're
in
the
back
first
of the room
person I
from now
see.
on. It's a big number. Would I like it personally to be 300? I would. Do I have a logical argument that says there's any real reason to bring it to 300? No. So just looks high.
Okay, Eileen, you're next, Eileen, on the people that I can see.
I'm just wondering what we've spent of this year's contingency besides COVID. I mean, we have some projections on possible overspend, but that keeps actually getting smaller on the school side.
You know, so we have about 300, a little less than 300 left. Most of the 200 we spent so far has been COVID related.
Okay.
And we're having meetings next week with every department, but
Yeah.
based on the conversations we had, we're on target across the board or under budget, you know.
Yeah.
But to Glenn's point, this is a tight budget and something could pop up. And it's nice to have that relief valve.
Mhm.
With respect to what we've spent on the non-COVID contingency, we've spent about $68,000, which we transferred earlier this year. That covered, mostly that covered the union adjustments for the police and the public works. This figure next year would have to cover the union adjustments for the CSEA. And for every % increase they get, it's approximately $14,000.
Okay. Ricky,
I've been good with leaving it as it is. I'm comfortable with this number.
Dan,
Yeah, I'm okay. Especially with this special ed in particular, it's really a roll of the dice which direction it goes. So this could be eaten up with two new students moving into the district. So I think we leave it where it is.
Brianna,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's high, but I feel that because we don't, schools aren't really open yet fully. So I definitely think that we haven't seen if there's going to be any more. I think I'm comfortable with that number, just with the fact that the schools are still trying to figure it out. And I'd like to be able to help with special education if it needs. So Dan kind of echoed what I was going to say.
all right. I really believe that we've gotten the trust of the Board of Ed as a Board of Finance right now, and they took a lot of their own contingencies out, and they've relied on us to hold up our end of the bargain. And yeah, I know based on 68,000 prior year, and I understand the number. I just rather see us go another year and learn more with taking the extra out of that Board of Ed budget that they've had, for safety reasons over past years. They've now relinquished that to us, and I'd hate to not have it for them in case they're in need. It's probably too much. I won't sit here and tell you it isn't, but that's my opinion. So again, I think we had 4 people to leave it that way. Mark, you wanted to go down to 300?
Yeah, but I didn't really have a good reason to do that. It's no good math for me.
There's no good math on it at all. I just
Right.
think we've gained so much trust. I'd hate to not be able to.
I'm not saying we wouldn't fund them. We'd find another way if we had to, but yeah.
You get a couple of special ed kids that really need help, and you're going to eat into that very, very quickly.
I say, let's do a vote. I mean, I'm in for leaving it.
I really
Mark?
just wanted us to discuss it, to be
Oh.
honest.
All right, Eileen. I really do have a strong feeling on this, like I say, and I apologize for that. Is if we don't spend it, because it's in contingency, it has to go
Yeah.
through the boards anyway. The Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen has to approve it. It has to come to the Board of Finance for approval. There's safety nets in place
Yep.
to keep that money safe. And we're gonna have the bubble that Marcia and Steve are gonna have to work with the next year. It's not money that's gonna go to waste, in my
Right.
opinion.
Right.
Yep.
So then we leave it. All
Mhm.
right.
Glenn, this is Harry. Do you want, I have one comment, but you want me to wait till public comment?
I think we have to, don't
Yeah,
we?
okay,
Special
very good.
meeting?
We could do.
Sorry,
Very-
Harry.
No, that's fine.
All right. Steve, you sent out an email on this earlier tonight.
Yeah, I had a conversation. Did everybody get my email?
Yep.
I think what we do for one fire company, we have to do for the other, and that's understandable. Center Fire right now does have, the chief does have a command vehicle that he uses. I'm not sure we need 2 command vehicles at Center Fire. I think, given, as we've all discussed, the pandemic and the issues that we've had, that the command vehicles, Center Fire has asked for one, and I'm not picking them out, but they have asked for a command vehicle for, I think, 4 or 5 years at least. But I don't, I think if they, and this is again, subject to interpretation, spending the money on a command vehicle right now, I don't think is the right thing to do for either of the fire departments. Center already has one, and they have a pickup truck in there. So if I had a vote with you, I would say that we leave those out of these budgets now.
Is Center asking for a command vehicle or are they asking for a utility vehicle?
No, didn't they have one?
It's Kendall that's been asking for like.
Right.
Yeah, utility pickup truck, but it's the first year that they've asked for it. I haven't
So
pulled up.
they turned their command vehicle, their utility truck into a command vehicle. So that's why it's saying utility truck and not command vehicle.
I'm comfortable with the utility truck. That's fine, because they did transfer. And
We have 3 vehicles coming off of the police fleet. In the past, we've talked about where those were gonna go. We didn't discuss that this time.
No, we didn't. We have offered the vehicles, which are usually SUVs,
Yeah.
coming off the police to the fire departments,
Hmm.
and they've chosen not to accept them. These are usually 3 or 4 years old. They have a lot of hours on them, but
Mhm.
our guys keep these vehicles in good condition. You can tell that some of our cars are 15, 18 years old. That might be a good option too.
Yeah.
The fire companies have not chosen, we've offered it to them first in years past. Hey, we have, a 4-wheel drive SUV coming off the police department. Do you want to use that for a command vehicle? And the answer so far has been no.
Okay. My opinion is our volunteer fire people do more for our town and not paid than most citizens in our town. And I think that if they come to us and ask us for something this low, we owe it to them. I mean, I can't go against this, and my vote is going to be leave it in. I will not budge from that. I won't sway from that, my personal opinion. I think what they do, we don't pay them. We talk about giving the town employees a 2.25% pay raise to motivate them, to get them to come to work. And then these fire departments ask us for very little in the big picture of things. And when it comes down to motivating volunteers, this to me is a very small price to pay for the actual service that they give us in town. So that's my opinion, and I'm standing in to leave them in. So I'd like to know who your source was, a local fire chief that you talked to, Steve?
Yeah, I talked to a local fire chief. He's been a chief for about 20 years. I know him. He does not want his name used. I apologize. But
he is a local to another town fire chief.
Yes. And his point was, and one of the things he said, for a town like Brookfield, although it's never exactly the same between towns, you only need one command vehicle at any given fire. And usually our fire companies, they work really well together and they respond together. So any fire that's more than just something little, they usually both respond.
Right.
And one of them will bring a command vehicle.
I think Brookfield's unique in its own way. We don't compare to other towns, right? So I think Brookfield is a unique town, and I'm going to just stand behind what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, is that a paid fire chief or a volunteer fire chief?
Volunteer. Volunteer.
I don't know. He doesn't have a flavor for Brookfield if he's not
Yeah.
a Brookfield fire chief. I'm leaving him in. And
That's a fair assessment too. I'm just raising the points that.
I hear you and
You know,
voicing my opinion.
we can go either way on this.
Dan,
There's only one item in this capital budget that's been rejected all 3 years that I've been on the board, and it's this. And it's either that the fire department is putting it in there as an easy thing for us to cut so they can get their other stuff, which I don't believe they do it that way, or they feel they need it and we've cut it 3 years in a row. So keep
Are
it
you
in.
talking about the command vehicle or the utility truck?
Command vehicle.
Command vehicle, okay.
Command vehicle. The utility truck was a swap for the stabilizer. We were originally going to.
Yeah, it's the first year they've asked for the utility truck. I mean, I guess,
it wasn't a swap really for the stabilizer. They're getting the stabilizer under a grant, right? So they're still getting the
They're still
equipment. There was
getting
no swap really.
Yeah,
Grant
it
or,
might look like one, but it's not.
yeah.
but I guess, do they have a utility pickup truck now? Are they replacing?
They had one and they turned it into the chief's vehicle.
Okay. Could the chief have one of the SUVs from the police department and?
I'm okay with that, Eileen.
Yeah,
If we take out the electric vehicles and utilize the 2013 car that only drives 6,000 miles, that has less than 50,000 miles on it. So I mean, if we're gonna get into these things and we break it down to handing down used vehicles, I would like to, like, why are we going into new vehicles anywhere? When we only drive these vehicles 6,000 miles a year, a town car should last us 10 years minimum, if not more.
Yeah.
So just my opinion again. I mean, if we're driving into semantics of used cars and passing them down, why don't we take the police cars and make them the town vehicles instead of replacing the town vehicles? I mean,
We do that. And
then there's not a need for the electric cars then. Why are we spending the 50,000 on the electric cars if we have these 3 vehicles that we can hand down? Why would we get into 50,000 of cash?
would we get more in trade on the police vehicles than the 50,000?
No, police vehicles typically don't gather a lot on trade-ins because of the number of hours on them. If they come over to the town, we utilize them and we'll replace them.
Yeah.
In this case, I'm fine with the utility pickup truck because they've got to carry stuff around, do things with it. I see both sides of this. I do.
So if I remember the utility truck, it was also for winter use, but it was also for this COVID, and maybe Marcia can put it on our COVID line. They can't put 6 guys in the fire truck to carry 6 people anymore. You can only put 4 people in it. They got to have social distancing. So that was one of the reasons for the utility.
Will that change with the vaccinations?
It's a multi-purpose. I have no idea what changes with the vaccine or not.
You would hope.
No, I'm just
I
wondering
hope
if
everything changes.
that's a temporary situation.
So, but it's also, for the bad weather stuff, instead of taking on a small little call, I'm just remembering what he said, instead of taking this $1 million fire truck out, you take the pickup and God forbid it gets smashed up or God knows what, you put the miles and everything on that. So I'm voting yes on them both.
How do we work our other departments, Steve? Like right now, our fire chiefs are on call 24/7 pretty much, I would say. Let's take the police chief in town. Do we give him a vehicle?
Yes.
Is he on call 24/7 or is he on call once every 3 weeks?
The chief, the major, and Peter Frangs are all on call, alternating schedule for 24 hours a day. And they set their schedule up, and all 3 of them.
They have weeks off though in the month because they're not all on call 24/7.
No, they're not. They alternate. Who's on call?
So, well, we give them cars.
Yes, we do.
So we are operating our chiefs on a safety level at different levels because they're a volunteer fire chief. You're saying don't give them a car, but yet the police chief and 2 others, we pay for cars. and they're on call 24/7, our fire chiefs.
I see your point.
To me, it's beyond the point, if you want to know the truth. To me, it's pretty clear. That's where I'm sort of lost on this whole email today. I gotta be honest with you. I'm really confused. All right, let's put it to vote then. My vote is we leave them both in.
Glenn.
Mark,
Glenn,
go ahead.
Glenn, it's Ryan. I jumped on the Zoom call because
Ryan, we can't have anybody on this, I don't think.
Yeah, we're past public comment, unfortunately. We do have it at the end, Ryan.
Are you
I was
allowed,
just trying to explain your confusion, but okay.
are you allowed to call on him?
We generally don't allow that.
Well, I think in this case,
Deliberations, you'd have
Ryan
every-
is not- you can call on Ryan not as a member of the public, but as a member of the fire company whose budget we're discussing. I think that would qualify. Clearly, you don't want just the general public to be able to come and comment at any point during a meeting, but I think you could call on Ryan.
If
In
we had
this,
gotten- if we had gotten this note more than 20 minutes before the meeting, we might have asked Ryan to show up anyway, right?
yeah,
I mean, it's completely up to you guys. I just happened to be watching on YouTube, so I jumped on because there seemed to be some confusion. So I just wanted to clarify.
My board says, okay, go ahead.
All right, so I just want to clarify what we were asking for in comparison to utility trucks. So at Candlewood, we do have a utility truck. We do not have a command vehicle. In the case of the other firehouse, they have a command vehicle and they're asking for a utility truck. So they serve different purposes. We do have two different chiefs in town who both are equals. So having two chiefs vehicles in my mind only makes sense if one's to have it, the other one's to have it. So that's just where I want to jump in and clarify between the utility truck and the chief's vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Any
Ryan-
questions for Ryan while he's there?
Yeah, so since you're here, Ryan, thank you. Describe the difference to me or all of us, because I have a little question, I guess, the difference between a utility pickup and a command vehicle.
In looks or functionality?
Functionality.
Okay, because in looks, they're going to look very similar. In functionality, the chief's vehicle is used by the chief of the department or any of his designated. It would be a line officer who's taking call for that night, however you see it. And they would use it to go to the scene to be in command. It serves a true command function. It has a command board on it. A utility truck is to be used by any member to transport whatever you need to the scene, or a lot of times it's for speedy drive, stuff like that. We have a utility truck. We didn't repurpose our utility truck into a command vehicle. And that's why we're asking for a command vehicle and not a utility truck this year.
So to say that one command vehicle, this other fire chief that may or may not have more than one fire chief in his town. So if your fire department is called out, the other fire department fire chief is not necessarily responding to your call.
So we both respond to the same calls, but no fire chief is guaranteed to go to 100% of calls.
So it doubles our effectiveness for a chief
100%.
or makes more coverage or whatever. Yep.
100.
All right. Well, my mind was made up, but it's more cemented now. Thank you.
And I'm going to go back to YouTube now.
All right, well, before we go to vote, more discussion? Dan, Ricky, Eileen, Brianna?
No, I was fine with putting it in the other night when we were here. With, as Dan said, you know, it's been 3 years that they've asked for it. So my mind wasn't changed by the email.
Ricky?
Yeah, I was already good adding it in. I'm good now still.
Eileen? Eileen?
I couldn't unmute myself. No, I'm fine.
Okay.
So are we adding both
Yep,
in?
both in.
I don't know that we're adding them. They were already in. We're leaving them in.
We're, okay, yep. Hold on, go back up, Marcia, please. Go
We need
back up,
Parks and
go
Rec.
back up, go
Oh, wait.
back up,
Oh,
go back up, go back up, go back up, go back up. Where's the fire? I mean, the police. We had talked about this, the outside fund, Steve. I think you said that we could use the 65,000 of outside fund money.
for weapons replacement.
Sorry, my thing went mute. It does that sometimes. So I talked to Chief Purcell this morning. We both agree that the BOLA, the weapon replacement, the patrol rifles, and the carpeting, if need be paid for with the outside services fund. Chief Purcell did want to make the point, and I agree with him 100%, that we're concerned, and I think I sent you guys a note on this, that the outside services fund not be used for everyday, year-to-year expenses, which I think is very reasonable. That wasn't the original intent. So if it's things like rifles that we're replacing every 10 years, or the BOLA wrap, which we replace, I don't know, every 4 or 5 years, depending on its lifetime, the chief is fine with that. So we can, and they will put that through under outside service.
Great.
I actually agree with your logic, Steve. And when I asked about the car, I really wasn't thinking
Yeah,
that
yeah.
all the way through.
Yeah, I know you agreed with me.
Yeah, that thinking I think is correct of, and Mark, your feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to, the fund is higher than it was intended to be.
Yeah, we have 191 now.
Right, we intend to be around 150, right?
No, we're
Right.
gonna be below that now
I
because,
said intend. Glenn.
Yep.
Yep. It will reimburse pretty quickly, especially with the paving and the Huckleberry and all of that, and the new gas water main. So, understanding all of that, yeah, I would do the BOLA wraps, the vehicles, and the carpet whenever we find the carpet on here.
Eileen, you're next that I can see.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, would we, if we think that's going to be reimbursed, we said it was 191 now, but we don't, is that the actual number or was that the last known?
That's the actual number in
Okay.
checking
I
all
was
the,
just looking, there was the 17,000 in radios, if something like that could go out of outside services also.
I'm sorry, say again, Eileen?
The radios? I didn't know
Oh,
if,
that's a normal operating expense, putting pieces and parts of equipment. We do it every year. We have to keep the radios running. I wouldn't be comfortable with putting that in the outside services fund.
okay.
That's an everyday
But
type.
If that, okay.
And the
Ricky?
BOLA wraps, Marcia,
The BOLA wraps we took out last time.
Yeah, the bolo we did last night, Steve. We did that already, or 2 nights ago.
this is a little small on my screen. Oh, there, it's better. Okay.
It's already out, right?
Yeah.
Bolo's out, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the email made sense to me. I'm good with using the outside services fund to fund those items that were listed on there. Was it the carpet, the BOLA wrap? Did the weapons?
Steve,
Did the weapons fall under that as well?
Yes, because they only purchase them every 10 years or so.
Okay.
In fact, they would keep the ones they had, but remember they were called back under the new PAA.
But this also standardizes what all officers have. So there's a bonus in that. Silver lining, I guess.
Yes, in a way, yes.
I think for future budgets, why don't we have, if they're above 150, why don't we have that part of the police presentation of utilizing above the 150 towards reduction in budget instead of having to ask for it and go back? I mean,
So next year, if I'm here, if I run, next year we'll just say, hey, when the police make their presentation, can you tell us what you're comfortable with using the outside services fund for? That's a good idea.
right? And if it's up to 190 or 200,000 again, I mean, I'm not saying take it all, but get it down to the 150 and utilize it, to reduce some taxes.
Yep.
Okay.
Can we go back up to the Parks and Rec, the Cadigan netting?
Yes, thank you, Eileen.
So
Did everybody get a chance to see? I think Mary's on the call. Did everybody get a chance to see her
I did.
message?
I did. I read her email, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot more that went into the netting than I even understood the other night, and I'm all for adding it back in. She made a very, very, very good points and very convincing argument as to why it's important.
Mhm.
I agree. We're looking at so many different capital projects. I did not fully understand, and I probably should have asked more questions when she presented to the Board of Selectmen. After having a long conversation with Mary, and given that we're losing 2 fields, I think this absolutely should go back in.
Yeah.
I do too. The only thing that concerned me in this process, and I think you're right, is it was a 13 on a priority list. Now I'm on board. I think it's a priority. So I'm not claiming it's not. And I'm all for putting it back in. It's a no-brainer to me to put back in. But it even shows more that we do need a capital committee, because when we look at this as a Board of Finance and we get the presentations, which are condensed and, relatively short, it's hard to take a priority 13 and put it into a top priority. Now,
Yeah.
to me, this is a top priority. We're losing fields at Huckleberry. We're trying to do things. And when it got explained to the board, and I think I can speak for all board members, none of us were like, are you kidding me, when we got that letter from the resident? It was
Yeah.
more like, we missed this as a group. We need to put this in. So again, to me, it highlights a need for a capital committee and prioritizing it where these number 13s don't get lost.
Yeah, we've already started to work on that because that's a really good idea. And so we should plan to have that done in the fall. Do it in November, October, November timeframe. So that when the Board of Ed and the town goes out to our employees at the end of December, right, we have that at least lined up with all the details. I think it's a great idea. We talked about it a couple of years ago, but didn't implement it. So we will do that. And we'll put together a structure and a plan for what we think it should look like. We need Board of Ed members, Board of Finance members, Board of Selectmen members, and then bring in our staff as needed. And we want to get a workable group. So give us a little time to put together what we think that should look like.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the resident for writing the letter. I think it really helped us as a board, and we don't have all that insight all the time. And, we try to do the best we can, but that was a well-written letter, very valid points, concise, and I appreciate it as a board member to get a letter like that. So thank you. Mark, you want to add any comments?
No, I'm in.
Dan, you in?
Oh, good.
Although
Ricky?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, do we pay cash for it or bond it? I guess.
It's a cash item,
Okay.
right?
I don't know.
I would say cash.
It's less than Steve was trying to get it, I thought, to 50,000. I thought that was your goal.
Yeah, at least, yeah, yes.
I mean, I know you want more, but I thought we were trying to step it up every year, and that was like,
Hey. How's that?
Dan, I didn't hear you.
Oh, yes, I'm in. Good.
Ricky?
I'm in, but should we consider maybe backing out of the turf dress crumb, the rubber for 17.5 to kind of ease the pain?
We already
We already
did.
did.
We already did.
I
it's already
moved out
cut
last
then.
night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never
nights
mind.
ago.
My notes are now updated.
Let's dig up the rubber that's there. That's a joke. All right. Move on.
Okay. Boys locker room. There was a lot of discussion today. I think Steve cleared it up. Marcia cleared it up. Rosa, I think, helped on that as well. And speaking of that, we're going to go back to expenses in a minute. I apologize. But on this boys locker room, we do need the 35,000. It's a part of a $70,000 study, which we had approved 35,000 of it 2 years prior. last year's money that we approved, the town couldn't vote on it. So that money could not be used until it was ratified by the town. And correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. And this year they need 35,000 more to complete the study for 70,000. That would allow us to go out to bid for the $1.322 million boys locker room renovation.
Correct.
So I know we talked about this our last meeting. 5 of us were on board with this at the time. 1 of us was on the fence or abstaining from this. I'm still on board with it. Let's go back around and make sure everybody's still comfortable. Mark, you're at the top of my list, so that's the way it goes.
I'm on board with the funds, that 35,291 funds for the design. That I can now be on board with.
Okay. The 1.3 million you're not on board with.
I don't see any way that if it's taken this long and they're that far away, how they, and we're just getting the money for the design to get the design done, how it's ready to go next fiscal year. I could give some measure of it to ease some pain next year, but I don't see it being ready. What project is taken off in a year?
Okay. After we go through the opinions here, Rosa, I know you're on, so I'll bring you on. Or, you know what, Rosa, why don't you come on first in case you have something to say?
Sure. So yeah, the 1.3, well, I will say that the design for the project is mostly done. What you've seen is the design for the project. What the remainder of the 35,000 will do is create the detailed specifications documents that are necessary to go out to bid. They don't put those together until there's a monetary commitment that the town is going to move forward with the project. I don't know if that helps.
So that's not really a design cost. That's really part of the cost of the build.
Right.
If it's not going to be
the bid documents.
If it's not going to be done until you're doing the bid, it's not really part of the design.
Correct. I mean, they're for the detailed.
At least the way a
what you
contract
saw was sort of the schematic design, and what needs to go out to bid is a more detailed specification.
So you need this in order to go out to bid.
Correct.
And the sooner that you get it, then the sooner you guys can actually go out to bid with the designs you already have on hand.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Got it.
No, wait, Rosa, you're not just waiting for specifications. You don't have a set of bid documents, or we would have seen them, I imagine. You don't have
right. That's
a set
what.
of blueprints. You
Right.
don't have bid documents. You don't have, right, you have what we call well, I won't say what we call them, but you have a artist rendering of what you have in mind. You don't
Correct.
have your documents, you don't have architectural documents.
Right. In order to get those, that's what the remainder of the 35. It wouldn't make sense to do all of those unless we were going to move forward with the project.
They have a design concept, a well-documented design.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
So they need to turn that into a real document to
The
go out to bid.
architectural and engineering process take far longer than the process to come up with the renderings of conceptually of what you want. That's my point. If you say you need all of the money up front in order to get those, then that's your stance, I guess. I'm not gonna argue with you and say you're wrong. You know what you have to do.
I mean, I guess you can maybe think of it like the school project, right? We didn't have blueprints and all of that until after the project had gone to referendum. And at that point, that's when Tecton could sort of dig in and make those documents to go out to bid. So it's similar in that way that, you do kind of start with something that is more schematic. And then as the commitment once the commitment is there, then you move on to something more solidified.
I understand what you're saying. That's the way the school worked. But if you gave Tecton whatever the amount of money is, if you say it's another $35,000, they'll make you what you tell them to make you. Whether you're going to use them or not, they'll do all their engineering for you. They'll do all the architectural. Whatever you pay them for, they'll do. And if they won't, there's 100 companies lined up to do it. So what ideally for me, and as a taxpayer, I would vote yes for the renovation, but I would love to see that as a standalone project that the town votes on. To be buried in a $70 million budget, that pains me. And I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose or to be shifty. I want to be clear with that. I just think it should be voted on as a separate project.
Dan?
I hear what Mark's saying. But I'm still good.
Eileen?
I'm still in favor of it.
Ricky?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
Brianna?
I'm in favor of it. Rosa, I just wanted to take a second to thank you for clarifying the 35. That helped me tremendously understand it. So I get that it's a second stage, and that did solidify it for me as well. So thank you for the detailed and clear explanation.
You're welcome.
So Steve and Marcia, I have a question for you. Listening to Mark,
Yeah.
I understand the processes now. Mark's looking at possibly not delays, but this is going to take time. If we approve it now, that doesn't mean it has to be spent next fiscal year, correct?
No, it does not. You have to start spending money within 3 years of the approval, the referendum date.
And
And
I
that
don't,
you can spend $1. The second point that I'd like to just bring up is and I see Mark's point about having the town vote on this separately, but if we had another referendum, that's another $6,000 to $10,000 to run a referendum.
could we put it as a separate question on this referendum?
You could, I think you could. But, all of the lists of everything we have is available to everyone in town. They can all look at this. This is on the town website, so they can make informed decisions when they vote. Then, if we go that way, well, where do we do the cutoff? Are we going to have 10 questions on the referendum? I don't know if
I wouldn't put it on the referendum. I think it's people, when they're looking at spending big money, and then this is right next to it, to me, that gives it less of a chance of passing.
I would agree with you.
So I wouldn't do that. I think it's a standalone project, and probably a good one at that, probably, but people pick $1 million, Steve. There's some number that for a big project, there's a pretty clear definition of what's a big project. I'm not talking about a $30,000 set of temporary stairs.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But anyways, you've all voted, so we're good. Let's move on. Put it in black and let's go. I can lick my wounds and move on.
It's not a matter of licking your wounds. It's a matter of we talked about it. That's all. We had a good conversation about it.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Before Rosa, before you go and that you spoke, I want to go back to the education line. So we have a chance to talk about that. So Marcia, can you go back to the education line and expenses? Okay, so I'll give a little history of where we're at. The first selectman went with the proposed education budget. The Board of Selectmen had discussions. They had received new information that an ESSER grant, an ESSER 2 grant, I believe it is, was available. They also took out a little bit of money to try to reduce the budget on the education side to see, to make it more feasible for passing. The Board of Finance, that was 140,000, of which 96,000 of that was ESSER 2 grants as presented by the Board of Ed and by Dr. Burrill. That left them 44,000 shy of their request. We discussed it 2 meetings ago on our side with Rosa's, with discussion with Rosa, that they could maybe find another $20,000 on their side. So we put back into their budget 24,000 to make them somewhat whole. Rosa, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. Thanks. That's a good recap. And
So
I
you're,
also want to, yeah, sorry. I also want to say I did watch your meeting from the other night, and we were really appreciative. And you know, like I said, we were very confident that we can get 20,000 out of this budget. And just to sort of clarify, you know, that is. We don't anticipate having to cut any particular services or materials or anything like that. How this will mostly be accomplished is not through big chunks of anything, but through a lot of little things here and there. And what Dr. Brill had asked his principals and department heads to go back to do was to go back and take a look at their budget, since it was created 6 months ago. So, I mean, there are some things that, you know, maybe cost estimates have changed or usage has changed. So that's where they're sort of finding, you know, these tiny little savings here and there that we're pretty confident that we can get the 20,000. So we're really appreciative of your cooperation with that.
okay, I just, you know, because I spoke for you the other night, so I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, does any of my board members want to speak to the process here? Mark?
No, I'm good. Add it in. The school's been very good working with us. I really appreciate it, Rosa. You guys have been very helpful this budget. And
Dan?
we're here for you if something falters. You know that. We've got your contingency.
Thank you.
Dan?
We've been through this. We're in good shape.
Eileen?
Yeah, I'm happy putting money back in.
Brianna?
Happy, all good.
Ricky?
Very happy with how it's been so far with the schools.
All right, Rosa, I thank you as well with your openness and communications with the board this year. I think it's really helped us as a Board of Finance. And the trust is appreciated. That, you know, it helps us in this budget season. So thank you so much.
Sure, anytime. Thanks.
Okay.
Have a good night, guys.
Yep.
So, Marcia, I wasn't watching. You added that in. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry.
So where do we stand now on the overall?
Did we finish everything?
Yeah, I think we did.
I don't think so.
I thought we did. I'm just
Yeah,
trying.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it's something I'm against, so I'm happy not to mention it. But you wanted to look at adding more money in for oil, Glenn.
No. That's an exercise we're gonna do here after we get to this point. How's that?
Okay.
So the last thing that you wanted to do was to decide whether you were going to use fund balance to offset the current income. So right now we would need a transfer of 235, 248. And if we used fund balance, we would need 171,000 less. So this is where we stand now. And that leaves us with a 1.52% increase.
I'm sorry. When you talk about using those funds, you lost me.
In our capital, that we had some in the cash capital non-recurring fund, we had some leftover money from last year.
Yep.
This is the fund balance on the financial statements at the end of the capital non-recurrings fund balance. So that this was not assigned for any projects. And so in the past, last year was the first year that we said, hey, let's take some of that and offset what we need to transfer in. It was only 41,000 last year. So now we would be transferring 2,335,000 in the operating budget to the capital non-recurring. the cash one. That, do you want to transfer that? Or do you want to say, well, we want to reduce that by what's available in that budget? 173 is the net here.
Yep.
Do we want to reduce what we transfer over by what's sitting there?
Right.
Or do you want to wait until after next month when we have that bigger discussion?
Before we do that, Marcia, can we do an exercise for me?
Absolutely.
Let's take out the 1 point. This is an exercise, strictly an exercise. Let's not, let's take out the 1.6 million of the bond revenue. Let's remove that.
All right. Oops.
I am interested to see where this heads.
What do you think the debt will be next year, the bubble debt? Above this year?
I think it'll be probably over $1 million.
Okay, add that in.
Yeah.
This is strictly an exercise, Steve. Don't get nervous, please. I'm not doing anything manipulative.
I'm not nervous.
So if it's the same as this, if it's the same as this year, the interest on that first payment was 1.2 million.
Okay.
I'm just going to add it there to make it.
Yep. Yep. Where we at now is a summary, as a starting block next year if we don't get the extra revenue. We're at a 5.73% increase next year without adding in any extra salaries or anything because of that loss of revenue. Now, Steve, you have other avenues of getting revenue. I understand that. But if we don't recover that bond premium revenue next year, we're looking at a 5.73% increase. This is basic, this is just a scenario. So I'm leaning towards saving that money for next year. This is where I'm getting to. Anything that we can save to reduce that 5.73, I think we need to be more careful on.
Well,
Now, go ahead.
So Marcia, without any increase in revenue that we saw this year, what would that percent have been for where we are? We're at 1.5, but what would it have been if we didn't have any of our naturally increasing revenues?
So if we just didn't have that bond premium, that we would be at a 3.97.
No, I don't think you got what I was asking.
No, I think that's exactly, if we didn't have that, this is extra revenue that's not reoccurring. This is non-reoccurring extra revenue.
Right.
We'd be right now at a 3.97 increase.
Understood. If we didn't, but we got other revenue that increased, the grand list.
Yeah, that's about 1%. Every year it goes between 0.8 and 1.
So that 5.75 is going to be at least a point lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I mean, it was an exercise.
I wanted to do my exercise.
Yeah, but the wages are going to be higher.
Yes.
So that kind of offsets that. So I think that's what Glenn is talking about is the same thing that Steve and I are working on is what is our plan? We need to have a plan.
Yeah. And I agree with Glenn. We should put as much money as we can into capital non-recurring, into those funds so that when we hit these bubbles, we have that money to offset. So we're not hitting people with a 6% increase. We know that the 10-year plan showed increases of 4 to 5% in some years. We want to keep that down as much as possible. So I agree with Glenn on that.
I just wanted to show the exercise if we didn't get that revenue to show what it's going to be like coming out of the gate. So I think, because that's out of the gate, 4%. And we know we're running a very low budget. We know the Board of Ed ran a tight budget.
Right.
I'm just worried about the bubble years. And Marcia and you have been talking about these 3-year bubbles. So that was just a visual for me to see the bubble's real.
Oh, it's real. real. And we're putting together the plan to ameliorate it and to soften it. And I think we'll have a good one. There still will be increases though. You know, when you build a new school for $78 million, there are going to be some increases. But I think we can offset a lot of that if we're very smart and put money aside and really be conservative. And so have that money ready to soften the increases in the debt load.
Okay. So now, Marcia, let's go back to finish the exercise. Let's go back. If we took that money that you're saying now and applied it to this year's budget, what does it drop our 1.52 down to?
Hold on, let me find my. So, it's a tenth of a mil, it should be, that, that was 173,881. And so we go. So 1.26 versus 1.51.
So I think as a board, that's the numbers you got to look at, right? Do you want to save that money to next year to offset a bigger increase? Or do you want to take it this year, reduce our mill rate down to 1.26? How do we want to handle it as a group? Steve and Marcia have both suggested that we look at saving for next year because we have a bubble, but again, it's our budget at this point. Do we want to go from 1.52 down to 1.26? And if so, we do that. Or if not, or we could do a portion, I guess, as well. I mean, so I've been picking on Mark all night. Let's start with Eileen now. How's that?
Keep not preparing myself to unmute myself. I think we need to protect ourselves from the bubble. I think without using that money, you know, we've presented a solid budget, and I think we should just kind of prepare ourselves for what we know is coming. I think that would be more fiscally responsible than applying it to this year.
Okay, Ricky?
Yeah, I think 1.52 is a really good increase. It'd be nice to drop it lower, but yeah, it's not worth the risk of what could potentially come up next year. I think we need to just leave that in there for next year.
Brianna?
Yeah, I agree. I think with everything that we got done in this budget and the things that we added in, and we were really smart about choosing what was going in and what was taking out, I would rather save it because we may not be so lucky in the coming year, and we may be very thankful that we have those savings to offset. That exercise was very telling.
Thank you. Dan?
Marcia, if we don't use it next year, can we use it the following year?
Yes, we can.
Okay, then I'm in favor of postponing as well. I believe that we do have a bubble, but it's another year out because I think we're going to get a similar premium next year, but I do understand the risk. I wouldn't want to waste it. So if we can use it in the coming years, that I think we absolutely should save it for whenever that bubble happens.
Okay, Mark?
So that $175,000 doesn't make a dent in the bubble, whereas the remainder of the funding from that $1.6 million COVID grant would make the difference, or the Iroquois gas coming online in the next 2 years, which is almost a reality, especially if we can pass the bubble next year. So that's makes a real difference this year, won't make a drop in the bucket the next year.
I've looked at it both ways personally. I do think that your statement is right, Mark. It doesn't make much of a difference. I mean, it makes a bigger difference this year, probably over the long haul. But I'm more worried about the next 3 years. I mean, I truly am. I'm, you know, the Iroquois money may come. I get it. the grant money, I don't know I feel about that personally until it's in our bank or Steve gets a letter saying we're going to get it. It's nice, but we thought we were getting a lot in the FEMA, and Steve worked hard and Greg Dombrowski worked hard on the FEMA things, but we didn't get near what we thought, we were going to get because they change the rules all the time even. So I like that we have our contingency up. I'd like to keep that money, and I think it'll flatten out the next 3 years. And if we do get the Iroquois money and we do get the other money, we should be really good for the next 3 years. Steve, your opinion?
I agree with you, Glenn. To be conservative, to save money against the bubble. I mean, who knows? We know that Iroquois could probably got a 90% chance, maybe higher, of coming in. There's other development going on in town, but this is something we know for a fact. We have $170,000 that we can apply towards the grants. I think a 1.52% increase is very reasonable given all the things that we're trying to do. So I would agree with you and say put it aside for next year or the year after.
Mark, one of the things that we have going for us this year, and you can correct me because I respect your opinion, one of the benefits we have this year is we're going to vote. So we're presenting this to the taxpayers at 1.52 if we decide to keep it this way. If they vote it down, we do have now resources to reduce the mill rate, correct?
Yep.
Yes, that's correct. I feel that for me personally, the budget that the Board of Finance puts forth is the one that we think is best for the town. And I take that, and all of us, I'm sure, take that very seriously. I'm just voicing my opinion on what I think is best for the town. Taxes are cumulative, right? They extra half a point or extra quarter of a point now grows to an extra 0.3 of a point next year and 0.5 of a point in the year after, and it's just cumulative and it just adds up. Anytime you can slow it down is a good time to slow it down.
Yeah, but you also have to consider that this is a one-off revenue to offset it, and we would lose that. So then that 3.97 next year would actually be even bigger. Because of that, we'd have to basically make up for that extra 200,000 as well.
Right.
I don't know. I can go either way. I see Mark's point. I really do see Mark's point. Well, let's vote on it. Ricky, where you want to leave it at?
I think I'm good with the 1.52% total increase.
Rihanna?
Sorry, I have a barking dog behind me. So sorry. I'm fine with holding it. Just come back to me until the dog's.
All right, Eileen?
I'd rather hold off. I don't want to apply it to this year. I'd like to hold it up until bubble years.
Dan?
My opinion remains the same.
Okay. Rihanna?
I'm
back to
fine
you.
with it. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm still, my original still stays to hold it.
Okay. So even if I've said put it in, it's still 4-2.
Yeah.
So we leave it in.
That's how it works.
All right, now we're to Dan's point, going through the whole thing, finalizing it.
So this was without any changes from tonight, obviously. I put this together this evening, but I looked at the budget that Steve sent out yesterday or after our last iteration, which is materially similar to where we are today, and the model that Marcia put together a couple of years ago, and compared the fiscal 22 budget to the fiscal 22 model. And we are for a $70 million budget, we're really, really close to what was modeled a couple of years ago, which I think is fabulous. Town operations, The budget is negative, is 1.95% less than what was modeled. The school budget is almost exactly what was modeled, 16 basis points, 0.16% higher than what was modeled, which is fabulous. The capital was a little hard. We're a lot less in cash capital this year. The bonded capital, we had to combine 2 years because we actually didn't bond last year. So that's a little shaky. The debt service line, which I think is what we were just talking about. Look at where we are right now in fiscal 22 at just under $5 million. We modeled, I think that probably included the entire school, Marcia, but we modeled a $7 million debt service line item for this year, and we're only at 5. And that the reason we're so beneficial to model on this is because we've only borrowed for half, and because
It was also at 4%, Dan.
we got a great rate. So when Marcia said that we would be adding 1.2 in debt service, that's on top of this 5. So we'll be at 6.2 versus the 7 that's modeled are the round numbers when we get apples to apples. But delaying the bonding helped on the modeling. So you go down to the total cash expenditures, and we are 2.7% less in fiscal 22 than was modeled several years ago. So I think this is a great job over a several year period, matching expectations to budget. I then looked at the grand list and the taxes. It's very impressive that the grand list modeling and the actual modeling are within 1% of each other. Over 24 months later, that's a hell of a modeling job. Then you go down to tax-free, so the taxes are actually less, and the mill rate's actually a little over 6% less than what was modeled a couple years ago. So I think that last year we were really vocal about holding to the model. This year we didn't pay as much vocal attention to it, but I wanted to make sure that we were still paying actual attention to it. And I think it's really good. I think that it shows that the model that we worked on a couple of years ago is holding strong 2 years later. So well done.
Thanks for working on that, Dan. That's really good to see. And I think that really supports the decisions that we've made.
Any other comments?
That was awesome, Dan. Thank you. I wasn't a part of working on that because I just got here, but that's pretty cool to see that.
I think it's in line with what we've been talking about and what Marcia and Steve have been driving for. This helps keep the bubble from really biting us. So it's much appreciated. So do we want to, as a general budget now, are we good with where we're at? Mark, you start off the top. Do you have any concerns other than the ones you've highlighted?
No, I'm fine on everything else.
Ricky, you want to add anything?
No, I think everything turned out well. I think, especially on the capital side, I think we're getting a lot of things out there that I don't feel is though we would be expecting an increase next year if we don't get the bond premium. I think we still have a lot in cash that we can manage down to kind of ease that as well. So I don't know. I feel very comfortable with how everything turned out.
Okay, Brianna.
Sorry, I was having trouble with the mute button. I'm pleasantly surprised. So I'm happy. I'm very happy.
Eileen.
I think we were presented with 2 really solid budgets to start off, and I think that put us on a good footing at the beginning of this process. And yeah, I think this is something that we should be proud to present to the town.
Dan.
I'm quite pleased as well. I think compromises and discussion all around, some people more than others, I recognize that. But I think that we ended up in a really good spot.
To close it out, I think we did to amplify what Eileen said. I think the Board of Selectmen attacked the budget as well, and that did not put the pressure solely on the Board of Finance this year. I think the Board of Ed also put pressure, to get at the numbers drilled down properly and take the pressure off the Board of Finance this year as well. I think as a group, we pretty much accommodated everyone's needs in this budget. I think that there's no one that really is left out, and I think that it's a manageable budget, and I think that it's one that we should present to the town. So that's my 2 cents. Steve?
I agree with everyone's comments. I want to thank the Board of Ed. I thought especially you could tell with the questions that they came back to us, those 19 pages, they really did. And I'm sure they've done this in the past, but it was so transparent this year. They vetted their budget, they questioned it, they did a really good job. They came in with what I thought was a very reasonable budget, even when it was 4.07%, because of the health insurance. That was a huge part of it. I think the Board of Selectmen did a really good job looking at it. And I think that the town and the school both presented realistic, real budgets that can work and monitor and watch every penny. And I think running up against the 10-year plan, as well as we do, shows that we've got the structure and the background to do this and to manage the debt bubble in the future. We're working really hard on that now, and I think we're going to end up in a very good place. So I thank you all for all the work you've done. It's been reasonable, it's been fair and straightforward.
Marcia, anything from a numbers point of view that we should be afraid of, or that's out there that you have a concern of going forward?
Just the bubble. I was very pleased with all the hoops that you had us jump through, and that the budget stood up to them. So I thought the process was great. But my biggest concern is that debt, and the only big open item that I can think of on this is the health insurance and which direction it's going to go from what they told us.
Okay. John Lucas, you're not a member of our board, but you are our treasurer. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, you guys have said it all. The budget is very transparent, very detailed. You've done incredible due diligence. The Board of Ed has stepped up. I think this is an honest budget that the town has an opportunity to vote on. So you guys have all done an amazing job.
Okay. What I'd like to propose now is I make a motion for a 10-minute break so we can compile the numbers and put forth the motion to ratify the budget. So do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion? A vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's take us offline, Dan, quick. Dan, are we offline?
And I've got 2 dogs here tonight, and my husband on his way home. So
Looks
Hey,
like
we'll know
we're
when he
back.
comes in,
I'm
right?
not answering questions.
Okay, well, is all the board members back online?
I think so.
Ricky, you there?
I'm here.
Dan, you're there? Yep, Mark, you here?
Yes.
Okay, I see Brianna. Eileen?
Yep.
All right, so hearing no more discussion, I'm gonna make a motion. I'll make a motion that I move to approve and to recommend approval to town meeting and referendum a total budget of $74,718,791 for the fiscal year 2021-2022, comprised of $19,920,362 for town operations, $46,816,379 for school operations, $5,826,802 for debt service, and $2,355,248 for capital project as outlined and described in the budget being submitted to the town clerk. This budget represents an increase of 1.52% in the mill rate over the prior fiscal year, and brings the mill rate from 29.65 for fiscal year 20/21 to 30.1 for fiscal year 2021/2022. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Does anyone have any points before we take a vote? Hearing none, let's move the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes 6-0. I'd like to make a second motion. I move to approve and to recommend the approval to town meeting and referendum $4,770,379 to finance the costs of the 2021-2022 capital improvements project, as described in the capital projects plan, and to approve the issuance of bonds and temporary notes to finance said appropriations in accordance with the standard bonding and borrow resolution for said appropriations. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Anybody have discussion on these? Hearing none, let's move to vote. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. To the Board of Finance, I want to thank y'all for the process. It was a lot of work. I think it's a good budget to put to the voters, and I think the work was done, so thank you very much. Anybody want to add a closing remark before we go to public comment?
I just want to thank you for your leadership during this. Would have been a much more difficult process without you. So thank you.
Thank you.
I second that. Mark.
All right. Let's go to public comment. Any public comment?
Yes.
That's
Betsy McElvain, 127 Long Meadow Hill Road, Brookfield. Also chairman of the library board. I would like to say that the library board and the library would be very grateful if we could take advantage of a $10,000 extra appropriation to cover electronic books that we've had to buy in much higher rate during the pandemic, because while we still circulated books, the use of electronic books really went up. They are popular, and I think the popularity will not go down. And one of the small things not related actually to the pandemic was the use of electronic books by seniors, particularly seniors who have vision problems. Because while we do have large print books, they tend to weigh more than other books because it's got a lot more pages. But on an e-reader, you can make the text whatever size you need to conveniently read. So that drives probably a small part of it, but just the popularity of streaming and using e-readers and particularly during the pandemic, was very high. So we would appreciate if you could, and we can supply more information if you want to put down something for a grant, and be very grateful to you for thinking about it. And personally, I'd like to thank you from the point of view of a town citizen, and how you manage this budget process this year. I think it's really been interesting to watch, and seemingly with all the complications, it sounds better than it has in the past. So I thank you for all the hard work you all put into it, and hope it passes the first time through, as I'm sure you do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Appreciate it. Any other public comment?
Well, I hung in here till the end, so I might as well say what I was going to say. Harry Shaker, 87 Long Meadow Hill Road. As far as the contingency fund, because it is a pretty big number, I just want to make sure that anyone who might be watching this later on from the public or hears about it understands where the money goes in a contingency fund if it's not used. I think most people probably don't understand that. So that was just my one comment, that people just understand what happens to the money if we don't use it. So that was all I had to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Generally, we don't comment about public comment, but I think it's important, and I think it's really important with this budget vote coming up. So Steve and Marcia, if you could just reassure on that account.
On the contingencies, that's as we've discussed, for unexpected sudden expenses that we couldn't plan for. There are a lot of safeguards around that contingency. If it comes from the Board of Ed needs to come to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen needs to approve, vet the request, and then send it to the Board of Finance. So no monies are allowed to go out of the contingency without both the town boards looking at it very carefully and making sure that the expenditure is a good one and needs to be made. If those funds are not used during the year for contingent items where we don't know where we have an expense, those funds will flow to the general fund and generally to the unassigned fund balance, which helps us in when we go out to borrow money. We've talked about this previously in that we've been growing our unassigned fund balance so that when we do go out to borrow, we get the best rates possible. And that was evidenced last year by getting a 1.55% interest rate on the 35 million we borrowed versus the 4% we had in our plan from 2 years ago. So the money does not get wasted. It's very, very carefully managed, and no one can touch it unless all the boards agree. Does that answer the question, Harry?
Yes, thank you. I just would hate someone to come to the budget and be confused because they see a large number and
Right.
vote no because they don't understand that. So
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
And as for Betsy's point, we talked about that in the budget, and Marcia and everybody and Steve will be working on that as well for next meeting. Again, I think that's it. Hearing no other public comment, I think we're in good shape. Thank you all for all your help. Thank you, Steve, Marcia, for all the supplying of the answers to the questions that we asked. Much appreciated.
Thank you, guys. Really, really a good process this year.
All right, who's closing us?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Sounds good. Thank you. Meeting closed.